Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Ben and this is my backstory part 3. In this video I'm going to share with you the stuff that's really working for me. I'm just going to talk through those things in short, and I'll break them out where they need to into other videos so I can go into a bit more detail. I'll also include any useful links in the description below. So I think quite nicely and almost beautifully and simply it always seems to boil back to food, sleep, environment, breathing and exercise. And the things that I'm going to talk to you about are going to be walking, stretching, physio, eating, breathing, sitting, the cold, root cause protocol, bodyweight exercises, turning all tasks and jobs into an exercise, and then finally hobbies. So first up, walking. Walking's obviously great for stimulating blood flow, carrying oxygen, nutrients to the muscles, getting rid of toxins. It's great for the lower back and engaging all of those kind of muscles and making sure that they're moving the way that they should be. It took me quite a long time to make my peace with walking because I always felt like exercise should be physical. I used to love running, I've always loved the burn. I then had to ditch running for cycling and got a road bike, did that for 5 years, and then I kind of had to ditch that and ended up with walking. So I can kind of feel like I ended up with it. And then even then I would walk as fast as I could, overstretching, missing the point. So now I feel like I've got it sussed and I've made my peace with it. I walk for 2 miles every morning, and then I try to do a 10 to 15 minute walk at the end of the day too. When I walk, I make sure that my head's in the middle of my body, that I'm not looking down. So I tend to walk a kind of flat circuit, and I make sure I'm not overextending. And I use it as a good chance to make sure that I'm engaging my pelvic floor or my core, and then kind of work on my breath work as well. So I'll sort of, breathe in through my nose for 4, and then 4 steps, and then out through my nose for 4 steps, something like that. Next up, stretching. Stretching could come in the form of yoga, Pilates, or just stretching. For me, it's Pilates, just because I like the fact that it focuses on the core and the breath work. Stretching is obviously important in your rehabilitation after an operation, but since then for me I stretch every morning for 10-15 minutes just to get myself moving, and then 4 times a week I'll do around a 1 hour mat session. I'm going to do a separate video on this stuff so I can show you what that mat session looks like, but for me it's a chance to kind of challenge the core, really make sure it's as strong as it can be, and where I've got kind of any aches, niggles, to really kind of work on those areas. I also have a sort of a roller tube that I use for self-massage. I find that really useful, especially around the kind of the IT bands and the hip flexors that tend to tense up when your lower back kind of muscles go into spasm. So if I've got any niggles, aches and pains these days, I tend to go and see a physio. I've tried everything from chiropractors, cranial osteopaths, all sorts of kind of alternative therapies, but the one that definitely works best for me is physio. I like the way that you're examined, you're given exercises to improve mobility, flexibility and strength, and that session is very much just about assessing you and giving you the tools that you need to go away and do it yourself. So yeah, physio and sports massage for me. I'm fortunate enough I've not seen anyone for about 6-7 months. I've had periods where I've been seeing someone sort of every week for a couple of years, but right now I'm not seeing anyone, but as soon as I need to, it'll be physio. Next up, eating. This one's kind of nice and easy for me because I love cooking, I love eating, I like the idea that I've got control of this, and that it has such an impact on your body. And it makes sense, because it makes sense that food is your medicine and medicine is your food. And I think if you realize that most problems are inflammation, and everything that you can do to bring down inflammation is going to help, then looking at a diet that can bring down inflammation has got to be worth looking into. There's a really good book, I'll put a link in underneath. It's called Primal Body, Primal Mind by Nora Gedguden. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that really badly, but it's basically about a kind of hunter-gatherer style diet, so high fat, low carb, that kind of keto-ish style diet. As a rule, I tend to eat plants and animals. I tend to avoid modern grains. I avoid the kind of the 3 white devils, so white flour, white sugar and milk. I eat as much grass-fed meat as I can and as much fish. I've got some really cool recipes and ways of making stuff like kale and those sorts of foods really exciting, so I might do a little video on that stuff. Breathing or breath work. So this might sound crazy to some people. If you haven't looked into it, it's well worth looking into. Obviously breathing's important. I think what you'll find is, if you look at when women are in labour, if you look at when people are having anxiety attacks, if you look at when people are doing sport and they need to control, if you look at the Navy SEALs have different tactical breaths for different situations. Forever meditation and calming the body down has been about focusing on the breath. So it makes sense that breath work and breathing is really powerful. It's well worth looking into as far as kind of bringing down inflammation is concerned, focus. If you're about to kind of have an operation or a procedure and you're worried about it and you have anxiety, then consider how kind of breathing and breath work could help you there. I'm a big fan of Wim Hof. I'll put some links in below. He is into a combination of kind of controlled hyperventilation and cold exposure. I'll talk a bit about kind of cold exposure in a bit. But for me, I get up every morning and I do 4 rounds of a Wim Hof style breathing, and I've found it really, really useful for kind of clarity of mind, boosting my immune system. And some other weird stuff as well, which mightn't seem so obvious, but I think it's helped a lot with kind of fight or flight and being able to control that. Might sound like an obvious one, but sitting or how to sit. We spend so much time sitting and it's not something that we've evolved to easily do. I'm fortunate I work from home, so I can have the setup that I want. But I think there's a world of confusion with chairs and stools, and the companies that provide that stuff to people that have problems with their back, they inflate the prices loads, they take advantage of us or people in those situations completely. What works for me really, really well is a sit-stand desk. I've got a desk with a little motor on. I can alternate between my chair, which has great lumbar support. As soon as I find that I want to sort of sit back and rely on slumping back in the chair, I just stand up. And I alternate between standing, sitting, and I've got a yoga mat on the floor that I can roll out and have a quick stretch. Whilst I'm standing, I've got a wobble board so I can turn myself into a massive kind of weeble wobble but he won't fall down. And the combination of those things work really well. Same if I'm watching TV, I tend to kind of sit. If I do want to relax and slump, I'll do it for a bit, then I'll go and lie on the floor. I'll stretch a little bit. I'm going to do a separate video for people that are into, I'm a guitar nerd, and I'm going to talk about playing live, rehearsing how to sit, all that sort of stuff. Just a few quick words on this one. It's something called the root cause protocol. It says that all disease is caused by inflammation, and all inflammation, or the root cause of inflammation, is cellular dysfunction, which is caused by an imbalance in essential minerals like magnesium, iron and copper. It's super interesting. It looks at how your own stresses sort of manifest itself into problems in your body, how the depletion of minerals in soils affect you and your body. I'm definitely not qualified to talk about this stuff. I think it would be, I've got a friend who practices this and looked at my bloods, and as a result I have changed lots of things. I supplement certain things, so I take vitamin C, magnesium, omega-3s. I do adrenal cocktails twice a day. They're well worth looking into. I eat liver every other day, and I drink root fresh turmeric, lemon, pepper, ginger tea every morning. I think what's interesting about the supplement thing is lots of people tend to just supplement blind, and the body is super complicated when it comes to that biochemistry, and you can't just assume anything, and if you don't need it, your body will just get rid of it. So it's worth considering getting your bloods done. I don't see why it's not more commonplace for people to have their bloods done and see what it is that they need and what they're deficient of. Anyway, the root cause protocol, well worth looking into. I'm going to do probably a separate video on this. I've got a friend that's an expert on it. We could do it in the form of a Skype call or something like that. So bodyweight exercise. I'm really pleased that I've got to a place where I can start doing this stuff again. 6 months ago, I started doing press-ups, pull-ups, a few sit-ups. I keep it really short. I do about 25 minutes every other day, and I make sure that it's very controlled and that I'm engaging my core and there's no jerky movements. But for me, I worked on the smaller sort of core stability first. Once I got to a point where I could start working on the global muscles, I've started working on that. And I can definitely feel a huge benefit in my kind of overall core strength. Now I can start to use those kind of bigger global muscles. So turning everyday kind of tasks, jobs into an exercise. If I'm loading my kids in and out of a car, I'll make sure that I turn on my kind of pelvic floor and that I rotate in the right way. This sounds really silly. I unstack the dishwasher every morning. I'll use the top shelf as a chance to kind of mobilize and get blood flowing and kind of work on some twists. I'll use the bottom shelf to make sure I'm engaging that kind of pelvic floor and use it as a bit of a strengthening exercise. It's the same when I'm watching telly. I might sort of turn on and off the pelvic floor muscle. I might do some breath work where I'll do some box breathing or in for 4, out for 4, stuff like that. If you don't know much about the pelvic floor and core, it's definitely worth going away and doing a bit of research on that stuff, because really the more work you do on your core strength and that kind of pelvic floor, the more you can reduce the load on your back. Finally, hobbies. So whatever love or interest or passion that you have, if you don't have one, then now's probably a good time to get one if you're going to have time flat on your back. For me, mine's guitar. I'm a complete guitar nerd. It's really saved my ass a few times. I've had plenty of long stints on my back. I've had a 5-month stint completely flat on my back, and it's really good time to sort of focus the mind, stop it wandering, stop getting depressed. Also, post-op for me, it's been a great means of, I've gone from being a physical person that loves the kind of the physical burn. I can't really easily get that anymore. But I can channel that into something else. I can channel that into the progression on the guitar. So that's probably been a bit waffly and a bit bitty, but I feel like I've said everything that is really kind of useful to me and I do day to day. Hopefully I've said enough for you to kind of, if it sparks an interest for you to go away and research it a bit more. I'll put links in the description below so you can kind of drill down a bit further. As I said, I'm probably going to do I'm going to do breakout videos so I can drill down a bit deeper into some of these subjects. But if any of you have got any questions, please drop us a note. If you want me to kind of talk about anything else, then yeah, drop us a message. If you think it would be useful to jump on a video call with you, I'm more than happy to do that stuff too. Cheers.